You give a money back guarantee that you can heal someone's marriage. Is that right?
Yeah. Our official slogan is we guarantee breakthrough for married couples facing breakdown, often in as little as 10 weeks. Quite often, what makes marriage so hard is people enter into marriage with unrealistic expectations. They don't have a firm grasp on the reality of being married to each other, because a lot of times, couples are still in a romantic haze, and they're so caught up in planning the wedding that they do not prepare for marriage. So it's like, what happens the day after the wedding, the day after you blew the 50,000, on this elaborate wedding, when your life actually begins as a married couple and you got, decades to look forward to, or, when things start to go awry, it's like, what did we do? And so if couples go into marriage with a realistic expectation and with some tools to handle some of those realities that we know will be part of every marriage, then the first temptation or the thought is not to say we married the wrong person, or we have to we can't keep going like this. We have to end this marriage and start afresh. Like all those kind of thoughts will not be in the picture if you went into marriage, with a realistic expectation and equipped, adequately prepared for the realities of marriage that are bound to crop up,
Right.
no matter how ideal your relationship is.
Right. Jeeva and Sulojana, you've mentored a lot of couples. What do you see? What are some of the most common mistakes, or maybe the most common mistake that people make in their marriage to sabotage their marriage?
I think one of the things I feel like is the lack of communication and lack of transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are hidden things, whether it's addictions or
Secret bank
bank
accounts.
accounts. Yeah. So then all of a sudden, they bring it up and then, their partner is shocked. And, then they don't know how to, handle those kind of things. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an issue of trust. If someone has a secret bank account, I mean, that goes to the core issue of trust, which goes back to communication, right?
Yeah. God very specifically told us that we need to focus on people who are at the point of giving up on their marriage. I mean, there's a lot of marriage enrichment programs, within the church. There's a lot of marriage counselors available who can help people with certain issues that they're going through. But what we sensed was missing is a couple like us, with decades of married experience, behind us, who could actually work very closely, and very closely meaning like almost in a setting where we give them total access to us, like they're living with us or we're living with them, to be able to bring up whatever they're going through and to walk through their journey with them for a short period, but an intense period, and get them the breakthrough, and then guarantee that they will get the breakthrough if they follow everything we teach them.
So yeah, you give a money back guarantee that you can heal someone's marriage. Is that right?
Yeah. Our official slogan is we guarantee breakthrough for married couples facing breakdown, often in as little as 10 weeks.
So, and has it been successful?
Absolutely. And it's funny, we didn't start out with the guarantee. It was actually one of our mentors that suggested that we offer the guarantee, because he said, we're at a meeting and he says, so what you're telling me is that every couple who has followed everything that you have been teaching them has received a breakthrough. And I said, yes, that's the case. And so he said, you know what? I think you're at a point where you need to offer people a guarantee, just in case they're real reluctant to invest in your process. And then the second thing he said was, but when you offer a guarantee, you have to hold their feet to the fire. That was the exact words. In other words, keep them accountable. And so once we found an accountability structure and process that would work, then it became a no-brainer to offer the guarantee. And again, we can very confidently say that every couple that has followed everything that we have taught and stayed accountable through the process has received their breakthrough without anyone actually, having to ask for their money back simply because, they didn't get the breakthrough after following everything that we taught them.
Well, let me ask you about this. Tell me about this. Let's drill down into this a little bit. The program, how much does the program cost?
Okay. So our program is valued at 10,000, US dollars. And within that, we have some flexibility, for people who are in ministry, for example, where we can make some concessions. We also will tell couples that sometimes it'll actually end up costing them more than that, simply because if we get to certain points where some issues come up that we cannot handle, because like somebody comes with deep childhood wounds, sexual trauma, abuse, and so on, that is not what our process is designed to take care of. So we would have to send them for further therapy, to get the healing that they need before they can really move forward without letting those demons from the past coming back and haunting them.
Right. Well, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at the cost of a divorce, I mean, $10,000 is a drop in the bucket. I think I cannot imagine how many people are out there thinking that if I could have saved my marriage for $10,000, they would have jumped at that chance, because the reality of a marriage, it costs hundreds of that, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, yeah. Like my same mentor who encouraged me to offer the guarantee also said to me, I mean, Sulojana wasn't there. I was at that meeting by myself, but he basically said, "Listen, I know, like more than one. I know a number of guys, middle-aged guys, who have gone through a divorce, and they forget that they have to first of all pay with after-tax dollars, and they're not prepared for the way their lifestyle was changed. Many of them are living in basement apartments or one-bedroom, places, and they just don't count the cost, because people think, well, I can go get a divorce for so much, but the cost of the divorce is not what you pay before you get divorced. It also includes what you pay afterwards, and that can often be multiple times what you paid to get the divorce. And Terry, like the thing that like Sloan and I have been noticing, in the circles that we move in, is not just the financial cost, it's the emotional cost. It's the way it messes up family relationships. It pits, kids against parents, kids against each other sometimes.
Yes.
And one of the questions we always ask couples is like, are you willing to pay that price? By getting divorced, by allowing your marriage to break up.
When people come to you, their marriage is in trouble. They know their marriage is in trouble. They're willing to shell out a sizable amount of money because they know the alternative is much, much worse. What can they expect?
So one of the things that we have realized as we started working with couples is we cannot make what we do issue focused. So they'll come and say, we're not communicating, we haven't had, sex for a long time. We don't even want to touch each other. We're arguing all the time as soon as you open up our mouths and so on. So people come with and expect a problem-based approach. So instead, what we operate on, the fundamental belief on which we operate is that there are no such things as marriage problems, but there are two individuals with their own problems coupled together in a marriage. In other words, couples want us to focus on the problems they have in the marriage, but we take them all the way back and say, let's look at the problems you brought into the marriage first, because those problems that you brought into the marriage, and by the way, when I say problems, more often than not, it is unhealed hurts. Everybody has hurts that they bring into the marriage, but if those hurts have not been healed, then the other person just has to say something, and they will poke that wound, and then that opens up, and the response all of a sudden is like, oh, what happened there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Having been married now for 36 years, I can relate to that. People don't realize the baggage that is brought into a marriage. That's the number. I have 5 adult children, and 3 of my adult children are married. And that's the one thing that we tell our kids, is that when you marry into a family and you marry someone who has baggage, you just don't see it yet. You just don't know it yet. What do you wish, Jiva and Sulojana, what do you wish someone had told you before you were married? If you could go back, and speak to your single younger self, what would you tell them?
I think one thing I was thinking is, that my partner thinks differently about certain things. Say, take finances, how to handle it. The way I handle it is very different from how Jiva handles it. And I thought, everybody thinks the same way. I wish somebody had told me, no, it won't be the same. The way they think or the way they handle things would be different. And yeah, you just have to work things out.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, this may sound a little bit odd to say, but like I think one of the things, like again, along this similar lines to what Slogan said, is to expect conflict in a marriage, because the closer you get and the more you share with each other with honesty and transparency, the differences between the two of you will emerge. In the beginning, you tend to focus on, what you have in common. And of course, that's what often brings people together. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. But when the differences start to emerge, and this is why sometimes, it is actually good, for couples before they get married to really make sure a lot of those differences are brought out in the open so that they don't, keep them, hidden, or just go along with their partner. Like again, like quite often it's like, well, if I really tell him how I feel about it, then, he may not like me. He may not want to continue in the relationship. Well, it's going to eventually show up anyway. So you might as well bring out the dirt and deal with the ugly side of things, before you get married. Because once you're married and these things come up, it's a very different dynamic. It becomes a lot more difficult, to resolve. And so part of, I think, Terry, like one of the things that we would say to couples today is make sure, you actually go through a thorough form of marriage preparation before you get married. You can save yourself a whole heap of trouble, and you can set yourself up, for success in your marriage. You will not become a statistic if you go in with that attitude of preparedness. And secondly, uh, get some help and healing for the hurts and trauma that you have experienced in your childhood, and don't all of a sudden surprise your spouse with some of these things that happen to you, because at that point again, the momentum of marriage moving forward is going to be lost, and you're going to start regressing. And that's when all these thoughts come about: marrying the wrong person, I can't make this work, she won't change, he'll always be the same. And people just can't move forward after that.
If both people in the marriage have a commitment to making it work, that is really, to me, that's the biggest single thing that the biggest key to success is a commitment to stick to it, and not just a commitment to be married, but a commitment to work through the problem.
Yeah.
If someone is not willing to change, and they're not willing to grow, and they're not willing to humble themselves, that's a huge red flag. And it's actually kind of logical that you can offer a money back guarantee, because if a person's willing to do what it takes to do the hard work of humbling themselves and being willing to learn and being willing to change and being willing to adjust their lifestyle and being willing to adjust their attitudes and their behavior, that gives the spouse hope. It's when the person's saying, you ought to love me the way I am, I'm not willing to change, and they turn and they walk away, either physically or emotionally. That's when, that's on them. If they're not willing to stick it out, then that's on them. But if they're willing to stick it out and they're willing to do the hard work to make it work, that's the key, right?
Yeah. And Terry, I'll maybe add one more thing with that, is the perspective of time. So like one of the things we often tell couples is, listen, no matter how long you're married right now, sometimes I'll ask a question: how many more years do you expect to live? Like, what do you think your life expectancy is? And so let's say they come to us in their 30s. So reasonably, according to statistics, it could be at least 40 years, maybe longer. Okay, so you still have a chance to have 40 years of a great marriage. Now, what if you took a whole year right now, or maybe even 2 years, to work through all these things that you're going through, because right now they look like huge obstacles that you cannot overcome, or it's going to take way too long. Well, what if that way too long is 2 years? You're still going to have 38 to 40 years of a great marriage. So
Mhm.
is it worth taking the time to work through it? So that's the perspective that people often don't have, because it's like, no, it's not. I got it. It hasn't worked for the last 18 months. So that's it. We're calling it quits.
Right. Wow. That's a very mature, but also a very realistic perspective. Just
Mhm.
when you consider we've talked about this a little bit, when you consider the emotional and the financial price that someone is going to pay for divorce, you're talking about minimally hundreds of thousands of dollars and probably millions of dollars
Yeah.
over decades
Yes.
going to cost, that a divorce is going to cost.
Yeah.
So, would you pay a few $1,000s and a few months of your time to try to save a marriage? Oh my goodness, that's a no-brainer.
So the sams.ca, and on that website, we actually have access to our calendar where people can book an appointment, just answer a few preliminary questions so we get to know what is going on in their marriage. And then we meet with them, give them a totally free consultation, do a deep dive into the issues that they sense, are really keeping them apart, and recommend a course of action. And if they choose to follow the course of action that we recommend, then we also tell them, what we expect them to invest in it, and also what we are willing to invest in them.